Go clean the bathroom. My 35-year-old son Marcus barked those words at me for the fourth time during our family dinner. The pot roast grew cold on my plate as I stared across the table at this man I had raised, nursed through childhood illnesses, and celebrated every milestone with. His wife Sandra smirked while chewing her food. My teenage granddaughter Ashley rolled her eyes and continued texting. I set down my fork, pushed back from the mahogany dining table that had belonged to my grandmother, and walked away in complete silence. The walk down the hallway to my bedroom felt like crossing a bridge I could never return from. My slippered feet moved silently across the hardwood floors that my husband Frank had installed with his own hands 23 years ago. Each step carried the weight of 3 years' worth of accumulated resentment. 3 years of being treated like hired help in my own home. Frank passed away from a sudden heart attack on a Tuesday morning in March. By the following weekend, Marcus had moved his family into my 4-bedroom colonial house in the quiet suburbs of Denver. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary while they searched for their own place after Marcus lost his job at the accounting firm. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I had become their live-in domestic worker. Every morning, I prepared breakfast for 4 people before 6:30. Sandra preferred her eggs over easy, with whole wheat toast cut diagonally. Ashley demanded chocolate chip pancakes, or she would refuse to eat anything at all. Marcus expected his coffee black and steaming hot, served in the blue ceramic mug his father had used every morning for 2 decades. The laundry pile never ended. Sandra changed clothes 3 times daily and dropped everything on her bedroom floor. Ashley went through 4 different outfits before settling on one for school, leaving the rejected options scattered across her unmade bed. Marcus somehow managed to soil 3 shirts in a single day working from my kitchen table, where he conducted his freelance bookkeeping business. I cooked dinner every night, cleaned every dish, vacuumed every carpet, and dusted every surface. When Ashley needed rides to soccer practice or dance lessons, they handed me the car keys. When Sandra wanted groceries from the expensive organic market across town, she presented me with detailed shopping lists written on monogrammed stationery. When Marcus required documents printed or faxed for his clients, he commandeered my home office and left me to tidy up the mess afterward. The bathroom cleaning demands had started 6 months ago. Sandra complained that I was not maintaining proper hygiene standards for their comfort. Marcus supported his wife completely, insisting that since I was living in the house rent-free, contributing domestic services was the least I could manage. Ashley joined the chorus, claiming that her friends were too embarrassed to visit because our bathrooms were not spotless enough for her social standards. 2 weeks earlier, while running errands for the family at the shopping plaza, I had stopped at Henderson's Corner Store to buy Sandra's preferred brand of imported sparkling water. The establishment was a family-owned business that had served our neighborhood for 37 years. Janet, the store clerk, had been working there since she graduated high school and knew every regular customer by name. As I waited in line behind 2 construction workers buying coffee and lottery tickets, Janet smiled warmly and asked about my health. Her genuine concern felt like sunshine after months of coldness at home. When the men ahead of me joked about their lottery numbers bringing them early retirement, Janet laughed and suggested I try my luck too. I had never purchased a lottery ticket in my entire 65 years of life. Frank and I had always believed in hard work and careful saving rather than gambling our money away on impossible dreams. But standing there with $23 in my purse, money from my own Social Security check that I had kept aside for personal expenses, something inside me shifted. I asked Janet for 1 ticket with random numbers. She handed me the small slip of paper with a encouraging wink, telling me to think positive thoughts. I folded it carefully and placed it in the zippered compartment of my wallet, between my driver's license and a faded photograph of Frank on our wedding day. For 13 days, I checked those numbers religiously. Every Tuesday and Friday evening, I waited until the family was distracted by their television programs, then quietly retrieved my laptop from the kitchen counter. I navigated to the state lottery website and compared my numbers to the winning combinations, my heart racing each time. Yesterday afternoon, while Marcus was conducting a client meeting in my dining room and Sandra was napping upstairs, I performed my routine number check. The laptop screen displayed the most recent drawing results, and my eyes moved systematically across the 6 digits. First number matched. Second number matched. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth numbers all matched perfectly. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. I cleared the browser history, closed the laptop, and walked calmly to my bedroom. Behind my closed door, I sat on the edge of my bed and read the numbers aloud 3 more times, comparing them to my ticket. $40 million. My ticket was worth $40 million. Since that moment of discovery, I had been planning my escape with military precision. The lottery ticket remained hidden in my wallet, my secret weapon against years of accumulated humiliation. Every unreasonable demand, every condescending comment, every expectation that I should be grateful for the privilege of serving them in my own home had been building toward this moment of reckoning. Now, returning to the dinner table, with my newfound knowledge burning like a torch inside my chest, I observed my family with completely different eyes. They continued eating the meal I had prepared, complaining about seasoning and portion sizes, completely unaware that their unpaid servant was actually a multimillionaire who could disappear from their lives forever whenever she chose. I resumed my place at the table and picked up my fork, cutting a small piece of pot roast while listening to their conversation with renewed attention. Marcus was explaining his latest business venture to Sandra, some scheme involving flipping houses with borrowed money. Sandra nodded enthusiastically while describing expensive vacation destinations she had been researching online. Ashley interrupted their discussion to announce that her spring dance required a $300 dress from a boutique in the upscale Cherry Creek shopping district. Sandra immediately agreed, suggesting they make a day of shopping and include lunch at that new French restaurant everyone was talking about. Marcus calculated the costs aloud, concluding that they would need to access some additional funding sources. That was when they revealed their true intentions for my future. Sandra cleared her throat delicately and began speaking in the artificially sweet tone she used when delivering unpleasant news. She had been researching senior living communities and found several excellent facilities that specialized in comprehensive care for women my age. Marcus nodded along, adding that they were concerned about my increasing forgetfulness and declining physical capabilities. Ashley chimed in with examples of my supposed mental deterioration, forgetting to buy her favorite breakfast cereal, using regular detergent instead of the hypoallergenic brand for her sensitive skin, serving dinner 15 minutes later than usual, because I had been organizing paperwork in Frank's former office. Marcus pulled out his tablet and began showing them photographs and floor plans of assisted living apartments. The monthly costs ranged from $4,000 to $7,000, depending on the level of care required. Sandra suggested starting with the mid-range option and upgrading if necessary. As they discussed my future living arrangements without bothering to ask for my input, Marcus mentioned his conversation with his cousin Brad, who worked as a real estate agent specializing in estate sales. Brad had estimated that our house would sell for approximately $850,000 in the current market conditions. After paying off the remaining mortgage balance and covering sales expenses, the proceeds would provide an excellent foundation for their new life together. Sandra had already contacted 3 different facilities to schedule tours. Sunset Manor offered private apartments with meal service and weekly housekeeping. Golden Years Village provided more comprehensive care with 24-hour nursing staff and organized activities. Peaceful Gardens specialized in memory care for residents experiencing cognitive decline. Marcus explained that placing me in professional care would actually benefit everyone involved. I would receive proper medical supervision and social interaction with people my own age. They would gain the freedom to rebuild their family life without worrying about my increasing needs. The house sale would provide them with financial security to purchase their own home and establish independence. Mrs. Patterson, the director of admissions at Sunset Manor, had already prepared application paperwork and scheduled a preliminary interview for the following Thursday. Sandra had collected my medical records from Dr. Richardson's office and compiled a list of my medications and dietary restrictions. Marcus had consulted with an elder care attorney about the legal processes involved in transitioning financial responsibility. Throughout this entire conversation about my disposal, they continued eating dinner and discussing their plans as if I was not sitting 3 feet away from them. When Ashley asked about timeline, Marcus replied that they hoped to complete the transition within 60 days. Sandra wanted to begin house preparations immediately, starting with decluttering my possessions and painting the interior rooms in more contemporary colors. I listened to every word while maintaining a neutral expression, my hands steady as I continued cutting small bites of food. Inside my chest, rage was building like pressure in a steam engine. These people had invaded my home, consumed my resources, treated me like an unpaid servant, and now planned to warehouse me in institutional care while they profited from selling the house. Frank and I had worked 37 years to pay off. As they debated the merits of different nursing home amenities, my phone buzzed with a text message from my sister Ruth in Portland. She was checking on my well-being and asking when I might be able to visit. Ruth had been inviting me to spend time at her house near the Columbia River for months, but Marcus always found reasons why I could not travel. He claimed my presence was essential for household management, and that leaving would create too much disruption for his business operations. I typed a quick response telling Ruth I would call her soon with travel plans. Something in my expression must have changed, because Marcus suddenly stopped his conversation and stared at me across the table. He asked if I had been listening to their discussion about my future care arrangements. Sandra added that my input would be valuable in choosing the most suitable facility. Ashley suggested I start sorting through my belongings to decide what could fit in a small apartment. I set down my fork and looked directly at Marcus. I told him I understood their concerns and would need some time to process this information. Sandra smiled with relief, commenting that she was glad I was being reasonable about the necessity of professional supervision. Marcus agreed that making this transition smoothly would be best for everyone. Then I excused myself to clean the bathroom, exactly as they had requested 4 times that evening. They returned to their conversation about vacation planning and house hunting while I walked down the hallway toward my bedroom, carrying the secret of $40 million and a growing determination to disappear from their lives forever. Instead of turning toward the bathroom, I entered my bedroom and closed the door with a soft click. From the back corner of my closet, behind winter coats Frank had never gotten the chance to wear again, I retrieved the small leather suitcase I had purchased secretly 3 days earlier. The sales clerk at the luggage store had recommended this particular model for its durability and compact size, perfect for extended travel. I began packing with careful deliberation, selecting items that held genuine meaning rather than mere utility. The silver-framed photograph of Frank and me on our wedding day went into the side pocket, wrapped in a silk scarf my mother had given me 40 years ago. My grandmother's pearl earrings and matching necklace, stored in their original velvet-lined box, fit perfectly beside my birth certificate and social security card. The practical documents came next: my driver's license, passport, bank account information, and the business card for Dorothy Martinez, my longtime friend who practiced estate planning law. Dorothy had graduated from law school the same year I married Frank, and we had maintained our friendship through decades of holiday cards, birthday lunches, and occasional consultations about financial planning. 6 months earlier, during one of our quarterly coffee meetings, Dorothy had mentioned the importance of protecting assets from potential elder abuse. Her legal practice included several cases where adult children had manipulated aging parents into signing over property and savings. She advised all her friends to maintain separate accounts and keep important documents in secure locations that family members could not access. Following her suggestion, I had quietly opened a savings account at a different bank across town. Every month, I deposited a portion of my Social Security check into this private account, telling Marcus I was managing household expenses more efficiently. The account now contained nearly $8,000, along with photocopies of every important document related to my personal finances. As I folded my most comfortable clothes and selected practical shoes for travel, I reflected on the subtle signs I had missed over the past 3 years. Marcus had gradually assumed control of my household finances, claiming it would be more convenient for him to manage everything from his home office. Sandra had begun intercepting my mail and organizing my medical appointments according to her schedule preferences. Ashley had started treating me like an employee rather than her grandmother, issuing orders about meal preparation and cleaning duties without any consideration for my comfort or dignity. When I occasionally suggested alternative approaches to household management, they dismissed my ideas as outdated or impractical for modern family life. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from the taxi company I had contacted that morning. Carlos, the dispatcher, confirmed that a driver would arrive at 5:30 the next morning to transport me to Denver International Airport. I had booked a flight to Portland that would allow me to arrive at Ruth's house by noon, though I had not yet explained the urgency of my sudden travel plans. While organizing the documents in my suitcase, I made a discovery that shifted my emotional state from hurt to fury. Hidden beneath my bank statements, I found the lottery ticket and examined it more closely under my bedside lamp. The small print at the bottom indicated a bonus multiplier that I had not noticed during my initial excitement. Due to a special promotion during that particular drawing period, my winnings were actually worth $43 million, not the $40 million I had originally calculated. But the financial windfall was not the most shocking revelation waiting in my document collection. As I sorted through papers, Marcus had asked me to sign over the past year, supposedly for household utility transfers and insurance updates. I realized he had been forging my signature on legal documents I had never seen before. 3 mortgage refinance applications, 2 credit card accounts, and a home equity line of credit, all bearing my forged signature and using my house as collateral. Marcus had been secretly borrowing against my property, while planning to dispose of me in a nursing home. The total amount of unauthorized debt exceeded $200,000. Sandra had been equally busy with financial manipulation. Bank statements I had never received showed systematic transfers from my checking account to various credit cards and personal loans in her name. Over 18 months, she had stolen nearly $37,000 while managing my simplified household budget. The evidence was overwhelming and documented in black and white. My son had been systematically defrauding me while his wife emptied my accounts, and their daughter had been raised to treat me with contempt and disrespect. They were not planning to place me in assisted living, out of genuine concern for my welfare. They intended to steal my house, liquidate my assets, and warehouse me somewhere I could never interfere with their criminal activities. I placed all the incriminating documents in a manila envelope and sealed it carefully. Tomorrow morning, this evidence would be delivered to Dorothy's law office, along with detailed instructions for pursuing criminal charges. Tonight, I would sleep peacefully for the first time in 3 years, knowing that my escape plan was nearly complete. From downstairs, I could hear Marcus calling my name with increasing irritation. He wanted me to clean up the dinner dishes and prepare coffee for their evening television viewing. Sandra was complaining loudly about the bathroom situation, demanding to know why the cleaning was taking so long. Ashley was asking when her laundry would be finished and pressed for school the next day. I ignored their demands completely and continued packing my suitcase. By this time tomorrow, they would discover that their unpaid domestic worker had vanished forever, taking with her the solution to problems they could not even imagine. I finished organizing my suitcase and slid it under my bed, covering it with the quilted bedspread Frank's mother had sewn for our first apartment. The shouting from downstairs was growing louder and more insistent. Marcus was demanding that I respond to his calls immediately. Sandra was threatening to come upstairs and drag me out of my room if I did not appear within the next 5 minutes. Before joining them, I paused at my dresser mirror to compose my expression. The 65-year-old woman looking back at me had endured enough humiliation to last several lifetimes. Tomorrow, she would begin a completely different existence, free from ungrateful relatives who viewed her as an obstacle to their financial ambitions. I walked slowly down the staircase, each step measured and deliberate. In the living room, Marcus was pacing back and forth while gesturing angrily at his tablet screen. Sandra had moved to the kitchen and was loudly clattering dishes to demonstrate her displeasure with my delayed response. Ashley remained sprawled across the leather sofa, completely absorbed in her phone and social media conversations. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I overheard a conversation that stopped me cold. Marcus was speaking quietly into his phone, apparently unaware that sound carried clearly through the open floor plan Frank had loved so much. He was talking to someone about scheduling an emergency intervention with a social worker who specialized in elder abuse cases. The plan was more sophisticated than I had realized. Tomorrow afternoon, while I was supposedly viewing assisted living facilities with Sandra, Marcus had arranged for Dr. Adama Richardson to conduct a surprise mental competency evaluation at our house. If the doctor found any evidence of cognitive decline or emotional instability, a social worker named Mrs. Chen would initiate emergency protective proceedings. Marcus explained to his contact that I had been displaying increasing paranoia and confusion over the past several months. He had documented instances of my alleged forgetfulness and erratic behavior in preparation for this legal intervention. Sandra had been recording our conversations without my knowledge, collecting evidence of my supposed mental deterioration. The ultimate goal was to have me declared legally incompetent and assigned a court-appointed guardian who would approve my placement in long-term care. Marcus would gain power of attorney over my financial affairs and property decisions. The house sale could proceed without my consent or involvement. From the kitchen, I heard Sandra talking to someone else on her own phone. She was describing me as increasingly burdensome and potentially dangerous to myself and others. She mentioned finding me staring at old photographs for hours at a time, forgetting to turn off appliances, and becoming confused about basic household tasks. These were complete fabrications designed to support their competency challenge. I had never forgotten to turn off appliances or demonstrated any confusion about daily activities. My habit of looking at photographs of Frank was a normal expression of grief, not evidence of mental decline. Every instance they planned to cite as proof of my deteriorating condition was either a lie or a deliberate misinterpretation of normal behavior. While I stood frozen in the hallway, processing this betrayal, Ashley made a discovery that changed everything. She had gone upstairs to retrieve her phone charger from my bedroom and found the edge of my suitcase protruding from under the bedspread. When she pulled it out and opened it, she found my carefully packed belongings and important documents. Ashley screamed for her parents to come upstairs immediately. Within seconds, all three of them were in my bedroom, staring at the evidence of my escape preparations. Marcus demanded to know where I thought I was going and why I was packing without discussing travel plans with the family. Sandra began examining my documents, discovering the bank statements and legal papers I had organized for Dorothy. The confrontation that followed revealed their true feelings about our relationship with devastating clarity. Marcus shouted that I was an ungrateful burden who had been living off their generosity for 3 years. He accused me of being selfish and manipulative, trying to run away when the family needed my cooperation with the assisted living transition. Sandra added that my behavior was proof of the mental instability they had been documenting for the legal intervention. She claimed that attempting to leave home without proper supervision was exactly the kind of dangerous decision-making that justified emergency protective custody. Her voice was cold and calculating as she explained how my escape attempt would actually strengthen their case for having me declared incompetent. But during their angry tirade, Sandra made a crucial mistake. In her fury, she accidentally revealed that she had been systematically stealing money from my accounts for months to pay for her personal shopping and beauty treatments. She justified the theft by claiming that I would eventually need professional care anyway, so using my money to improve their quality of life was simply advance planning for inevitable expenses. Marcus supported his wife's confession by admitting that he had never felt genuine love or affection for me as his mother. He explained that I represented an obligation and financial burden that prevented him from achieving his true potential. Frank's death had provided an opportunity to finally extract value from our relationship by gaining access to my property and savings. Ashley contributed her own brutal honesty by stating that her friends thought it was embarrassing to have an elderly grandmother living in their house like a servant. She wanted me gone so they could entertain properly and live like a normal family without my constant presence, reminding them of their failure to achieve independence. Their words cut through my heart like surgical instruments, precise and devastatingly effective. Every suspicion I had harbored about their motives was confirmed in excruciating detail. They viewed me not as a family member deserving of respect and consideration, but as a resource to be exploited until I was no longer useful. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door had apparently been listening through her open window and witnessed enough of the confrontation to understand what was happening. As a retired social worker herself, she recognized the signs of elder abuse and financial exploitation. Her silhouette was visible through the curtains as she made notes about the conversation for potential future testimony. As the shouting match continued, I stood quietly and absorbed every cruel word they spoke. Their rage and frustration were revealing the depth of their planning and the systematic nature of their exploitation. Tomorrow morning, when I disappeared forever with $43 million in my possession, they would finally understand the consequences of treating family members like expendable commodities. The argument ended when I turned away from them and walked to my bedroom door. I told them I needed time to process their concerns and would discuss everything further in the morning. Sandra demanded to know my travel plans and why I had been hiding money in a separate bank account. Marcus threatened to confiscate my suitcase and car keys to prevent me from making any dangerous decisions. I ignored their demands and closed my bedroom door, turning the lock they had never bothered to notice during their 3 years of occupation. Behind the barrier of solid wood and metal hardware, I listened to them argue about damage control and legal strategies for the next 47 minutes, until they finally retreated to their own rooms to plan their next moves against me. At 4:45 in the morning, while my betrayers slept peacefully in bedrooms throughout the house I had shared with Frank for over 2 decades, I dressed quietly in comfortable traveling clothes and retrieved my packed suitcase. The hallway was completely silent, except for the familiar creaking of old floorboards that had become part of the house's personality over the years. Carlos arrived exactly on schedule at 5:30, his yellow taxi idling softly in the driveway while morning darkness provided perfect cover for my departure. He helped load my single suitcase into the trunk and asked if I was traveling for business or pleasure. I told him it was definitely pleasure, and for the first time in 3 years, those words felt completely true. During the 37-minute drive to Denver International Airport, I watched the sunrise paint the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and pink that reminded me of the watercolor paintings Frank used to admire at art festivals. The familiar landscape was transforming into something beautiful and hopeful, exactly the way my life was about to change. Carlos shared stories about passengers he had driven to catch early flights for vacations, family reunions, and new job opportunities in distant cities. His genuine enthusiasm for helping people begin exciting journeys felt like a blessing on my own adventure. When we arrived at the airport terminal, he refused to accept a tip, saying that anyone brave enough to start over at my age deserved all the encouragement possible. The flight to Portland passed quickly while I gazed down at clouds and farmland, thinking about Ruth's warm invitation to stay as long as I wanted. My sister had been encouraging me to visit for months, sensing through our phone conversations that I was struggling with loneliness and family pressures. She had prepared the guest bedroom and planned activities we could enjoy together. Ruth met me at the Portland airport with tears of joy and a bouquet of yellow roses, Frank's favorite flowers. During the drive to her house, overlooking the Columbia River, she asked careful questions about my sudden decision to visit. I promised to explain everything once we were settled privately in her kitchen with coffee and homemade cinnamon rolls. 3 hours later, I was sitting in the Oregon Lottery headquarters office, presenting my winning ticket to Mr. Thompson, the claims director. He examined the numbers carefully and confirmed that my ticket was indeed worth $43 million. After taxes and processing fees, I would receive approximately $26 million, paid either as a lump sum or annual installments over 20 years. I chose the lump sum option and provided banking information for electronic transfer. Mr. Thompson explained that the funds would be available within 72 hours, and all publicity about the win would be handled according to my preferences. I requested complete anonymity and declined any media interviews or public announcements. While the lottery officials processed my paperwork, I called Dorothy's law office from the secure conference room they provided for winners. Her assistant scheduled an emergency appointment for the following morning to discuss the evidence I had discovered about Marcus and Sandra's financial crimes. Dorothy would prepare criminal complaints and coordinate with law enforcement to ensure proper prosecution. But before leaving Denver, I had taken care of one final piece of business that would ensure justice for their years of exploitation. While Marcus, Sandra, and Ashley slept, I had left 3 sealed envelopes on the kitchen counter, where they would be discovered after my departure. The first envelope contained photocopies of all the forged documents and unauthorized financial transactions I had uncovered, along with a detailed letter explaining how their criminal behavior had destroyed any remaining love or loyalty I felt toward them. I informed Marcus that the house would be donated to a veterans charity in Frank's memory, and that he and his family had exactly 30 days to find alternative housing. The second envelope was addressed to Sandra and contained evidence of her systematic theft from my bank accounts, along with a calculation of interest and penalties she would owe when criminal charges were filed. I explained that her beauty treatments and shopping sprees had been funded by money stolen from a woman she had never shown any respect or affection. The third envelope was for Ashley, containing a letter about the consequences of participating in elder abuse and the importance of treating family members with basic human dignity. I encouraged her to learn from her parents' mistakes before their behavior destroyed her own future opportunities for healthy relationships. Copies of all 3 letters, along with the complete evidence package, had been delivered to Dorothy's office, the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit, and Detective Maria Santos, who specialized in elder abuse cases. Mrs. Rodriguez had also received copies to support her witness testimony about the confrontation she had observed through her window. The house deed transfer documents had been completed the previous week with help from Reverend Anderson, director of the Denver Veterans Housing Initiative. The organization provided transitional housing and support services for homeless veterans, exactly the kind of meaningful work Frank would have supported wholeheartedly. Marcus and his family would receive no financial benefit from their years of exploitation and manipulation. As I signed the final lottery claim paperwork in Portland, my phone buzzed with increasingly frantic text messages from Marcus. He had discovered my departure and the incriminating letters, and was demanding that I return immediately to discuss the situation like reasonable adults. Sandra sent messages threatening legal action if I did not reverse the house donation and honor my family obligations. Ashley's texts were the most revealing, alternating between attempts at emotional manipulation and angry demands that I stop being selfish and consider their needs. Her messages demonstrated that she had learned to view relationships as transactions where love and respect were conditional on receiving material benefits. I turned off my phone and handed Mr. Thompson the completed claim forms. Within minutes, I was officially a multimillionaire with the freedom to build any kind of life I could imagine. The first decision was easy. I would never again allow anyone to treat me with the disrespect and contempt I had endured for 3 years. Ruth was waiting in the lobby with champagne and chocolate cake from her favorite bakery. She had been patient about my mysterious errands, but was clearly bursting with curiosity about my sudden windfall. As we drove back to her house along the scenic Columbia River Highway, I began explaining the entire story from the beginning, starting with Frank's death and ending with my lottery victory and escape from financial predators who happened to share my DNA. 3 months after my liberation from domestic servitude, I was sitting in Ruth's garden reading updates about the criminal proceedings against my former family. Detective Santos had built an airtight case using the evidence I provided, along with additional financial records subpoenaed from banks and credit card companies. The scope of Marcus and Sandra's fraud was even more extensive than I had originally discovered. Marcus faced 18 felony charges, including elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery, and identity theft. The unauthorized loans and credit accounts he had opened using my information totaled over $300,000. Sandra was charged with 12 felony counts related to her systematic theft from my bank accounts and her participation in the competency fraud scheme. Ashley, as a minor, faced juvenile charges for her role in the emotional abuse and exploitation. The legal proceedings had attracted local media attention as an example of how financial elder abuse was becoming increasingly common throughout Colorado. District Attorney Williams held a press conference highlighting the importance of protecting vulnerable seniors from family members who viewed them as sources of income rather than human beings deserving of respect. Judge Harrison had denied bail for both Marcus and Sandra after prosecutors demonstrated they were flight risks with access to stolen funds and forged documents. Their public defender attempted to argue that the crimes were misunderstandings or well-intentioned efforts to manage my declining mental capacity. But the evidence was overwhelming, and their recorded conversations about nursing home placement contradicted their claims of concern for my welfare. The house donation to Denver Veterans Housing Initiative had been completed without any legal complications. Reverend Anderson sent photographs of the renovations being completed to transform my former home into transitional housing for 6 veterans who had been living in shelters or on the streets. Frank's workshop in the basement was being converted into a computer training center where residents could develop job skills. Mrs. Rodriguez had provided devastating testimony about the confrontation she witnessed, describing Marcus and Sandra's cold calculation and Ashley's cruel dismissal of my feelings. Her professional background as a social worker added credibility to her observations about the systematic nature of their emotional and financial abuse. The most unexpected development involved Jenny Hartwell, Marcus's former girlfriend from college, who had been unceremoniously dumped when he decided Sandra was a better prospect for marriage. Jenny had struggled as a single mother for 15 years, working multiple jobs while trying to complete her nursing degree through night classes and online programs. Unknown to Marcus, I had been anonymously funding a scholarship program for single mothers pursuing healthcare careers through a foundation I established after claiming my lottery winnings. The program provided full tuition, childcare assistance, and living expenses for women who demonstrated academic potential and financial need. Jenny had been selected as one of the first recipients based purely on her qualifications and circumstances. When Jenny learned about the Scholarship Foundation's connection to Marcus's family situation, she wrote a heartfelt letter describing how Marcus had abandoned her when she became pregnant with his child during their senior year of college. He had pressured her to terminate the pregnancy and threatened to deny paternity if she proceeded with giving birth. When she chose to have the baby, Marcus disappeared completely and never provided any emotional or financial support. Sandra had been present during many of these conversations and actively encouraged Marcus to cut all ties with Jenny and their child. She viewed the situation as an inconvenient obstacle to their planned future together and pushed Marcus to deny any responsibility for his actions. Ashley had unknowingly grown up with a half-brother she had never met, a boy named Tyler, who was now 16 years old and excelling in both academics and athletics, despite never receiving support from his biological father. The scholarship program had enabled Jenny to complete her nursing degree and secure a position at the Children's Hospital, where she specialized in pediatric cancer care. Tyler was thriving in high school and planned to study engineering at Colorado State University. They had built a loving, supportive relationship despite the financial struggles and challenges of single parenthood. Marcus attempted to contact Jenny through mutual friends when he learned about her success and the scholarship connection. His messages alternated between attempts to reestablish their relationship and demands that she provide character testimony for his criminal defense. Jenny forwarded all his communications to Detective Santos as evidence of his continuing pattern of manipulation and entitlement. Sandra had filed for divorce while awaiting trial, claiming that she was an innocent victim of Marcus's fraudulent schemes. However, prosecutors had recorded phone conversations between them discussing strategy for stealing my assets and hiding their crimes. Her attorney was attempting to negotiate a plea agreement in exchange for testimony against Marcus, but the evidence of her active participation was too strong to support any claims of innocence. Ashley had been placed in temporary foster care when both parents were arrested. The juvenile court proceedings were sealed, but family court records indicated she was receiving counseling to address the behavioral patterns she had learned from observing her parents' treatment of me. Her foster family was reportedly patient and supportive, helping her understand that healthy relationships were based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. I received regular updates about these developments through Dorothy's law office, but I felt no satisfaction from their legal troubles. The criminal justice system was working exactly as designed, holding them accountable for their choices and protecting other potential victims from similar abuse. My focus had shifted completely toward building positive relationships and contributing meaningfully to causes I believed in. The Scholarship Foundation had already helped 12 single mothers complete their education and secure stable careers in healthcare fields. Each success story reminded me that some people struggled against genuine obstacles while others, like my former family, chose to exploit vulnerable people instead of working to improve their own circumstances through honest effort. Ruth and I had developed a closer relationship than we had ever shared as children or young adults. She was fascinated by my transformation from victim to advocate and encouraged my plans to expand the scholarship program nationally. Her own experiences as a retired teacher provided valuable insights about education, funding, and program administration. I had also begun volunteering at the local women's shelter, offering financial planning workshops for residents who were rebuilding their lives after escaping domestic violence. Many of these women had survived economic abuse similar to what I had experienced, and they appreciated practical advice from someone who understood the challenges of regaining financial independence. The most profound change in my life was the complete absence of anxiety and fear that had dominated my existence for 3 years. Every morning brought new possibilities instead of dreaded demands from ungrateful relatives. Every conversation was voluntary rather than mandatory service to people who viewed me as disposable. 1 year after my escape from financial and emotional captivity, I was standing on the deck of my new cottage near the Oregon coast, watching seagulls dance across waves that sparkled like scattered diamonds in the afternoon sunshine. The 3-bedroom house had been custom designed to accommodate my needs and preferences, with large windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean and a garden where I could grow vegetables and flowers without anyone complaining about the expense or effort involved. Ruth visited every few weeks, bringing news from Portland and updates about the various charitable projects we had developed together. The Scholarship Foundation had expanded to serve single mothers in 8 states, with plans to establish programs in 12 additional locations before the end of the year. Each new recipient received personalized support and mentoring in addition to financial assistance. My volunteer work had evolved into a consulting role with domestic violence organizations throughout the Pacific Northwest. I spoke at conferences about recognizing and escaping financial abuse, sharing strategies for protecting assets and documenting exploitation. The audiences were primarily women over 50, who had experienced similar betrayals from family members they had trusted and supported. The legal proceedings against Marcus and his family had concluded with guilty verdicts on all charges. Marcus received a prison sentence of 8 to 12 years, with eligibility for parole only after serving the minimum term and completing restitution requirements. Sandra was sentenced to 6 to 10 years and ordered to repay all stolen funds plus interest and penalties. Ashley had been placed in a residential treatment program to address the behavioral patterns learned from her parents. Jenny had written to thank me personally for the scholarship opportunity and to share updates about Tyler's academic achievements. She had been promoted to senior nursing supervisor at the Children's Hospital and was pursuing a master's degree in pediatric healthcare administration. Tyler had been accepted to Colorado State University with a full academic scholarship and planned to study renewable energy engineering. Marcus had written several letters from prison requesting forgiveness and financial assistance for his legal appeals. His messages demonstrated no genuine understanding of the harm he had caused or acceptance of responsibility for his choices. Instead, he continued to portray himself as a victim of circumstances and blamed others for the consequences of his criminal behavior. I had not responded to any of his communications, but I had saved them as reminders of why my decision to disappear had been necessary and justified. People who view relationships as opportunities for exploitation rarely change their fundamental character, even when faced with serious consequences for their actions. Sandra's letters were similarly self-serving, focused on her own suffering in prison and her need for financial support to rebuild her life after release. She expressed no remorse for stealing my money or participating in the scheme to have me declared incompetent. Her primary concern was securing resources for her own comfort, rather than acknowledging the pain she had caused. The most heartbreaking correspondence came from Ashley, now 17 years old and preparing for high school graduation. Her letters showed genuine remorse, an understanding of how her family's behavior had been cruel and destructive. She apologized for treating me with disrespect and asked if there was any possibility of rebuilding our relationship in the future. I had responded to Ashley with a carefully written letter explaining that forgiveness was possible, but that trust would need to be earned through consistent demonstration of changed values and behavior over time. I encouraged her to focus on completing her education and developing healthy relationship skills before considering contact with family members she had hurt. The cottage had become a gathering place for women who were rebuilding their lives after escaping various forms of abuse and exploitation. We shared meals, gardening projects, and conversations about healing and empowerment. These friendships were based on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than obligation or financial dependency. Dr. Richardson, my former physician in Denver, had contacted me through Dorothy's office to apologize for his planned participation in the competency evaluation scheme. He explained that Marcus had convinced him I was developing dementia and needed professional intervention for my own safety. The doctor had never spoken directly with me about these concerns and had relied entirely on Marcus's reports about my supposed declining mental state. Reverend Anderson sent quarterly updates about the veterans' housing program at my former house. The 6 residents had all found stable employment and were working toward permanent housing solutions. Frank's workshop had become a popular gathering space where residents taught each other practical skills and provided mutual support during their transition to independent living. Mrs. Rodriguez had moved to a retirement community in Florida, but maintained regular correspondence about her experiences testifying in the criminal trials. She encouraged other witnesses to speak truthfully about elder abuse they observed, emphasizing that silence enabled predators to continue harming vulnerable people. My days were now filled with activities I chose based on personal interest and passion, rather than obligation to ungrateful relatives. I attended art classes at the community college, volunteered at the local library's literacy program, and maintained correspondence with scholarship recipients who had become like adopted daughters to me. The financial freedom provided by the lottery winnings had eliminated concerns about healthcare costs, housing security, or basic living expenses that worried many women my age. But the greater gift was emotional liberation from people who had treated me like a resource to be consumed, rather than a human being deserving of respect and affection. I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away from people who don't value you. Respect isn't given freely, it's earned, and it starts with respecting yourself enough to demand it. Money doesn't buy happiness, but freedom from toxic people certainly helps you find it. Every morning when I wake up in my cottage by the sea, I feel grateful for the courage to change my life when change seemed impossible. The lottery ticket was just a piece of paper, but the decision to use it for liberation rather than remaining trapped was the real prize worth $43 million. Has anyone in your life ever made you feel like a servant in your own home? Share your thoughts in the comments below about how families should treat each other with respect and dignity. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more empowering stories about women who fought back and won, and share this message with anyone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my journey from exploitation to empowerment. May you always remember that you deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, and that it's never too late to reclaim your power and build the life you truly want.